Hey there, and welcome to another episode of The Caption Life, a podcast about how comics and pop culture impact life and society, and vice versa. Coming to you from my own personal bat cave deep in the heart of Texas, I'm Kevin.
And deep in the depths of Arkham Asylum, I'm Sean. Before we get started with this episode, please hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and follow us on social media under the username @CaptionLife. You can also find out more information and past episodes at thecaptionlife.com.
Judging from the way that we introduced ourselves and our secret locations, we're going to talk about Batman on this episode. Not talking about Batman. We're going to talk about the Batman and the history of Batman on film. We actually have a very special guest with us joining us to talk about Batman tonight. It is Michael Rothman, who has spent almost a decade in the entertainment space for ABC News and Good Morning America, writing about Marvel and DC, including superhero shows, books, and movies. And while at ABC, Michael hosted the digital show Inside Marvel, a look into the inner workings and major developments in the superhero genre. He also collaborated with Lucasfilm and Disney on several other projects. More recently, he's taken to the platforms like TikTok under the name Superhero Talk to continue to dive further into the world that he loves and to connect and collaborate with like-minded fans. That's how we met him. He enjoys long walks on the beach, a good cigar, a solid Punisher storyline, and snuggling with his dog, Leia Bagel. Yes, we did say snuggle.
Yeah. That is a mouthful of an intro. And damn, you guys make me sound good.
Yeah, we always love the build everybody up, the big intro. Like my goal in life is to have an intro worthy of our show.
Seriously, I don't think I've ever sounded better. Well, God, can you guys just be like my daily hype men? So when I go into a room, it's like this is what plays. I feel
like Paul Bettany as Geoffrey Chaucer on The Knight's Tale, getting everybody hyped up.
Right.
It's called a lance. Hello.
But true story though, when I was a senior in high school, I was the manager for the basketball team, and I got to do the introductions for the games. And my coach would give me the rosters for the other teams. And a lot of times there would be a foreign born basketball player on there. And so I had to learn how to say really, really tough names, but it also got me over the fear of introducing people. And now a lot of times I feel like I should just do it as Michael Buffer so that I can be like, it's time. Let's get ready. I don't think you can say that without paying for it.
Well, I mean,
that
guy's made the biggest career out of that. I mean, I'm sure everyone else's, their jaws dropped when I saw him at the Super Bowl this year. And I was like, wait, what? Wow. He's had some legs on that career.
So, but yeah, we love the good intro. And I think that you're worthy of a good intro. So, let's jump into it and try not to disappoint everybody.
That's going to be impossible not to happen. So apologies ahead of time to all your listeners. And if you guys lose about anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 followers, I'm sorry, and I will do my best to compensate you in any way I can. I don't know, comic books, whatever I can do.
We're not worried. We're not worried about it, Michael. I think this is going to go great.
I'll let you snuggle with Leia Bagel. I know when you were saying that, there's a flicker in your eye of happiness, and she's pretty adorable. So I'll let that happen.
I was about to say, I think we might be the first podcast ever to be in the negatives of listeners and followers, because I don't think we're at the thousands yet. So, Michael, every guest that we have on the show, we always like to ask them about their comics origin story. So we want to ask you, what got you involved in comics? Did someone introduce you to it? Was there a moment where you picked up a comic and this was, life-changing for you? What's your comics origin story?
So the funny thing is, I still remember my first comic that I got. And I actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, and I haven't said it out loud in years, I'm kind of proud because it probably will never happen to anyone else again, because I got a comic, a newsstand. I think it was a Fantastic Four book. I don't remember exactly which one it was. Thing was on the cover. And I got it at a drugstore. So this is probably 25, 30 years ago. And I remember getting it at a drugstore and being like, Mom, can I have this? And probably didn't say it in those words or that eloquently. Mom, give me this. And then I also, parallel to that, I was struggling at the time, probably around kindergarten, first grade. Reading and writing maths always come easy to me. Reading and writing were a little bit lagging behind. And so with that happening and me showing interest, my parents just like fully dove into it. And there was no turning back from that. Like it was, conventions, cards, shows. There was a card shop that was probably another thing that I don't know. Well, I think they're starting to come back, which is nice. I'm seeing that on social and TikTok and other places that the comic stores are coming back, which is nice to see. But there was one literally in my suburb. So you walk out of the block, walk across, the grass that separated like the individual suburbs or whatever, or individual cul-de-sacs. And there was a little comic shop there. So it was great. A lot of fun times there. So that was basically my origin story.
Where did you grow up, Michael?
I grew up in Coral Springs, Florida. So South Florida. It's probably like in the Boca Raton area for people that don't know Coral Springs, about an hour north of Fort Lauderdale, for any spring breakers out there that want to, have some nostalgia about that place.
That's right. Those people go to experience it, and you lived it. Spring break all the time.
Essentially. I mean, it was funny because, like, I think we always say, like, I think today, especially more than ever, we always talk about the bubble that we're in, right? Like, I live in New York City or New Jersey, but across right by. But I remember going to college. I went to college in Florida too, and there was people that had come in from all over the country. In my fraternity, there, it's a melting pot, and it was just funny. Like growing up, like nothing was really new, but you have people that come in that are 18, 19 that are just like, wait, what is this? This is crazy. But yeah, it was a pretty good upbringing. I enjoyed it. I really consider myself pretty lucky. But I'm sure, everyone's upbringing is different.
All right. Well, we're glad you're here today and to talk with us about the Batman and the history of Batman in film. We're going to talk about all of the highs and lows of Batman film history. I guess before we do that, we want to talk a little bit about our giveaway, right?
Yes. Do you want me to talk about it, Kevin? I know we didn't talk about this ahead of time.
No, go ahead. You want to jump on it, Sean? You lead the way.
No, I have no preference one way or the other. I can just go ahead and do that. That's fine. Yeah. So, So as Kevin mentioned, so we did host a Batman giveaway that we ran for a couple of weeks, and we had some really good results. We had some people who were engaging with it and participated in it and everything. So we're really excited that we had so many people that wanted to be part of it. So we just want to say thank you so much to everybody who was a part of it. And so we hosted the raffle, I think this past Monday, and our winner ended up being Shane Ruffy from Instagram, who followed us on Instagram and found us that way. And so he will be getting a $50 gift certificate to the movie theaters to either cover the cost of the Batman film, or, he could use it for something later if he wants. And then he's also going to get a collection of Batman comics, a Batman character encyclopedia, and a black and white Batman statue that was sponsored by Comic Book University, which is my local comic book shop here in Indianapolis. So congratulations, Shane. We really appreciate everybody who participated in the giveaway. So thank you, everyone.
It's one heck of a package. You just kept going and going there. I was like, oh, $50 gift card's nice. And then you're like, oh, a bunch of comics. we have Christian Bale's. We have Christian Bale's, Batman signed Batman, outfit from the movies, and then wow.
I think the holy grail of those things is like, is Adam West's like trunks on the outside of the costume signed. That would be pretty great.
Yeah.
Or the surfboard that he battled the Joker on the surf competition. Before they jumped the shark.
Then used the shark repellent for it.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, before we get started in talking about the Batman live films for this episode, I thought that I could share just some top 10 facts about Batman in the movies with everybody. And, these are probably facts that I think the three of us know either pretty well. And for people who are big fans of Batman, they probably will know some of these. And hopefully some of these will be new to some people as well, too. So I think that we probably know most of these, if not all of them, because I know when I came through that, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember hearing about that and everything. But let me go ahead and share just some top 10 facts about Batman films that I can share with everybody here. So the first one is when Michael Keaton was first cast as Batman in 1989, this was very controversial, right? So Michael Keaton at the time was really known as a comedic actor. And so when Warner Brothers announced that he was going to be the next Batman, there was 50,000 letters that they got in protest of casting Michael Keaton because they thought that he would just be too funny of a guy to really be Batman really well. And so I thought it was really funny that now he's like the iconic Batman. Now we're going to see him in the Flash and the new Batgirl film that's coming up and things like that. So have you two heard about this before? I'm sure you have.
I have.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think it's funny too. I think it plays into I posted a few days ago about that line, his first, I'm Batman line. And I think the other side of that is, so in the script, it was I'm the Knight, but I think the other end of it, which I won't say out loud because I don't know if you allow cursing on here, was originally was I'm Batman Mother. Because I think Burton wanted to put that in there to make him seem almost as like a response to those letters, right? Like it was to make him seem like a badass. And so he was like supposed to say like, I think the film was originally going to be R and then they had to make cutbacks or whatever. But yeah, he was supposed to like drop the F-bomb. That poor guy.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too that his career has come kind of full circle because he was a very much comedic actor in the mid to late 80s. And then Batman came out and he was kind of Batman for a couple of years and then did some other work. And then he kind of like drifted away for a while until the early 2010s and came back and was nominated for an Oscar for Birdman and has done a lot of serious work here recently, a lot of really good serious work and coming all the way back to being Batman again.
My favorite Michael Keaton moment is so I used to have to cover the Oscars. So when he was nominated, he was the front runner, right? And I don't know who beat him out. And I love the people that win that you forget, like like Crash when Crash won Best Picture or whatever. But it's the saddest, but also like he did a whole tour thanking his son. His son was like the breakout star of award season that year because he went with him to every award show as he won the Globes and whatever. And I'll never forget the image of him because I think he also thought he was going to win, pulling out his speech. And if you look at the video, you can see him holding the cue cards and pulling them out of his suit pocket. And then the other name is announced and he just puts it away and his son puts his hands over his shoulder. And I'm like, oh, man.
That's
poor
sweet.
Bruce. Oh,
I know.
Man. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's cool. I didn't know
say that he was nominated the year that Eddie Redmayne won, but I can't be certain.
Yeah, it might have been Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah. But I remember him being the front runner, like this was his year.
He was one of those guys, like they always have the predictions, right? Like if you win, if it sags and people come on strong, and he was coming on strong. He had won all the awards coming up to it. And so he did the old jinx. I'm a huge believer of the jinx. And if you ask my wife, I don't say anything until it's actually happened. Like I just nothing. I'm half Jewish, half Catholic, and I do like double prayers on planes before I take off. And I mean,
in the double
I have
guilt.
a whole. I'm super superstitious, and so I always say it's the jinx. He pulled don't pull those cards out. What are you doing? Like the name wasn't called yet.
Right.
Ah, poor guy.
Yeah. Second fact. So along the lines of Batman 1989. So most of the money that Jack Nicholson earned from that movie as the Joker actually came not from his salary, but the most of his most of his earnings came from a deal that he struck where he agreed to take a smaller salary for a percentage of the merchandise sales, which was a smart move for him because he still got a $6 million salary from the movie, but end up getting an additional $411 million for the merchandise. So I know. Well, and I think that was like the first kind of deal in its day for an actor to say, I'll take less money for the salary, but I'll take a percentage of the merchandise. And that was like a great deal for him. So, yeah.
Genius.
Yeah, he was a forward thinker. I have one response to that. Dad, I miss you. We need we need to take the paternity test.
I mean, when I hear stories like that, and obviously RDJ is another one who, I mean, God, I love, his favorite quote he ever did was that I used to be an EW reader, and they had interviewed the cast of the Avengers, and they're like, "What do you wear under the suit?" And he said, "Cash." That's what RDJ's response was. He's just like, I mean, he is Tony Stark, but the other side of that coin I always think about, and rest in peace, Sean Connery. I mean, he could have been that guy, and he turned it down for Lord of the Rings, and he would have gotten like $1 billion or something like that, or $2 billion, something like ridiculous.
This is Sean Connery
of box office. He was supposed to they offered him Gandalf, and he turned it down. And for Ian McKellen took it, and they were going to give him like, I think it was like 0.5% or like some ridiculous number of the box office. I mean, with the billions and billions that came in, it was worth like an extraordinary amount, and that's why he retired. He took A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was a terrible movie, and he's like, I don't understand the industry anymore. He just walked away. That was it.
Right. Matt Damon is on record as having turned down Avatar. Like James Cameron couldn't pay him his normal fee for Avatar, so he turned down what would have been like $200-300 million. But
I know.
You know, I don't like Matt Damon like personally. I don't know him personally. And I don't want to say more than could rule him out as ever having him a guest on our show. But
this episode is going to.
Wait.
It might have
we're
a lot
texting right now, and he does not like your comments at all.
It may have something to do with how attractive my wife thinks he is. But I'm not bitter. And he didn't need that money anyway.
Well, he made the movie We Bought a Farm, so tell your wife.
We bought a zoo.
I thought he bought a zoo.
Oh, sorry, we bought a zoo. Whatever, same thing.
I think he's in another movie where a farm
have
is
your wife
involved,
watch that movie.
Yeah.
He's in a lot of. I mean, he's another one. He's in a lot of great movies. The Bourne trilogy is some of my favorites.
Right,
and then he's in some real clunkers.
Next Batman film fact: Marlon Wayans was supposed to play Robin in Batman Returns, and the studio thought that there were too many characters, so they decided to postpone his role to the third Tim Burton film. But because that never happened, and there was a clause in his contract that said pay or play, he still got paid $100,000 to play Robin, and he never actually played the character. But I thought it was really cool. Like, if you think about it, at the time in 1989, 1992, Tim Burton had Billy D. Williams playing Harvey Dent, who is a black actor. And then Marlon Wayans was supposed to play Robin. And I think, we haven't seen that kind of diversity. And I say diversity, it's not like, a wide range of diversity, but it's a lot more diverse than some of the other superhero movies that we've had up to that point, and even after that as well too. So I thought it was really interesting that he was supposed to play Robin, but he also still got paid $100,000 for it too.
Yeah, I think that would have been way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And there would have been a lot of. I mean, he would have to crush it too, because I think I would have loved to see that. I'm a huge Wayans fan of the whole family, Keenan and Ivory. Marlon, all of them I think are great.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, wow, I can imagine. I would pay to see it because I would love to see the reactions, because the fans would have probably lost their minds of like changing their, the
Yeah.
character. But I actually would have loved to seen it. I think he would have been great and a different take on it.
Yeah. Well, and
Billy D was actually oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the current Batman comic, Batman 89, actually introduces Marlon Wayans' character Robin in the comic series. So if you do want to see Marlon Wayans as Robin in a sense, right, you can pick up those comic runs, which I can't. Oh my gosh, I feel terrible now because it's a really good comic run. I can't remember who's writing them right now, but we see Marlon Wayans as Robin in that run. We see Billy D. Williams as Two-Face eventually in that run, and so it's really cool to kind of see like what would have happened if this went this way, basically. So yeah. So if you want that little taste, go ahead, pick up those comics, and it's really good. It's really worth the money for it.
Yeah. I mean, that third film is something that I'd love to see. I mean, it's one of those things, right? Like, much like I would pay these days to see the Nicolas Cage Superman movie. Would die to see that movie.
Agree.
Whether it's positive or negative, I still would die to see that movie. That third movie, I would have loved to see. I really would have loved to see Billy D still in his prime playing a Two-Face. I think he would have been great. I mean,
yeah,
just always the coolest guy in the room, no matter what he's doing. So,
oh yeah. Next fact, to prepare for his role of the Joker in The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger spent 6 weeks isolated in a motel room to perfect his character, which I don't think really surprises anybody. But what I found really interesting is that apparently, not that, this doesn't surprise any of us at all whatsoever, but when Michael Caine first interacted with Heath Ledger as his Joker, that he was so scared out of his mind that he forgot all of his lines in that scene, which I thought was really interesting, like how convincing he was for an actor to know, like, he's playing a character role and he still got scared out of his lines.
That doesn't surprise me. He's pretty deep method. But unfortunately, some of that may have contributed to his mental state and mental health at the end of his life.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to look up. So I had interviewed 4 years ago now. Of course, not doing my research on my own work. And so I had spoken to his makeup artist 10 years after The Dark Knight came out. John Caglione, who also, he won an Oscar. He did the makeup on Dick Tracy, Chaplin, Donnie Brasco. The guy is, he's, as far as makeup artist goes, is one of iconic. And he used to go, I mean, he said also, I mean, the amount of work that Heath put into that role, and you could hear it, like, I wish I had audio of this interview. Great guy, brilliant guy. You could just tell, like, he was in awe and he knew it was something special. Like they would sit there for hours testing things out. And I think it wasn't planned, but like the swiping of the white makeup and the blotchiness that came from Heath. Like when they were doing the makeup and he would be like, well, let's try this. And like, I mean, the guy was so into this movie. So I'm not surprised about the sequestering for 6 weeks. He pulled a Daniel Day-Lewis basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there was some talk about how he must have, I think he spoke with Jack Nicholson about the role as well, too. And I think Jack was also trying to steer him away from doing some of this stuff because of that. And so it's, and I can't remember all the details and everything, but it sounded like, Jack was trying to make sure that he didn't go down this road. And unfortunately, that's what happened. So next is my favorite Batman film that I love to hate, Batman and Robin. This was the first Batman film to not receive a single Academy Award nomination in anything and was nominated for 11 Razzie Awards, which prompted the director of the movie, Joel Schumacher, to issue an apology to all the fans, which I thought, like, how many directors have done that in Hollywood history, right?
I mean, he also apologized a couple of years ago for the bat nipples, right? That was the bat nipples, right? That movie.
That's the bat nipples. Yeah.
And I think that was another 10 years later where he was like, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Apparently, also to add to your fact. Sorry, continue. Go ahead.
No, all I was going to say is apparently those are supposed to be based on like or inspired by Greek statues or something like that. But no one really picked up on it, and I guess led to people like thinking he was, suggesting like homoeroticism or something like that. Yeah, so I find it like it's really just to this day, like it's not just like the fact that he has those, but like the scenes that he put in there is like really focused on those nipples and the butt cheeks, like very prominent. Like not like even like trying to hide the butt cheeks. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. And then Alicia Silverstone was, I mean, it was the sum of all fears for bad things to happen. It was so bad. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny, like, well, it was, you watch movies like years later and you're like, it can't be as bad as it was. I think you posted about that.
Yes.
And that's one that like resonated. Your video resonated with me so much because that's one that like I think a couple years ago I watched it and I thought the same exact thing and I was like, this is worse than I remember as a kid. This is terrible.
Yeah, when that movie came out,
I was 15 when the movie came out.
Go ahead.
I was 15 when the movie came out, and I remember thinking, "What has Batman become?" And like I should not really have been old enough to know better, but like to me, I remember like we went and saw it as a family because like it was a big summer blockbuster movie, and I remember just thinking like it's terrible. Yeah, luckily 1997 I think is also the year that Con Air came out, so like there was some redeeming things at the Cineplex.
Put the bunny in the box.
Yeah. I was 13 when that movie came
Nicolas
out.
Cage is a treasure.
Yeah, I was 13 when that movie came out, and I remember thinking like, it wasn't as good as the other ones, but I didn't remember thinking that it was like terrible. I remember thinking it wasn't great, but I just didn't remember it being terrible. Then when I watched it again last week in preparation for this episode, I was like, I'll be okay with never watching this ever again.
You prep for these episodes?
No, it was just more. It was just more of. I was trying to think of something to watch, and I was like, we got this episode coming up. Like, I'll just go ahead and watch some Batman film. I only watched like that one and 1966 Batman film in preparation for this. I didn't even watch the other one, so.
I got you.
Yeah. I got through 89, and that was it. And I mean, again, on the other side of that coin, like I got through it and it still kind of holds up and Nicholson is still great. Right. And it's like, yeah.
Jack Palance was in it.
I guess I know other point. Yeah. What was that? It was funny because I was reading up on that. Like I was, just like you mentioned, you got through too. I went in like, I'm going to watch all these videos, and if you watch on Prime, they have the X-ray where all the facts come up. And I love that stuff. And I think the first day I got through 25 minutes of Batman, and I was like, I was distracted by other stuff. Whatever. But the Jack Palance thing, I think they wrote that role for him. They weren't even going to look at anyone else to play whoever that character was. It was supposed to be like a Carmine Falcone kind of a role, but
that's what it seemed like. Yeah,
that was one of the background facts. To plagiarize IMDb, apologies. That was one of the background. I remember that.
Hey, I think some of that's crowdsourced, so I think it's fine. Just like Wikipedia, right?
Yeah.
Burgess Meredith, who played Penguin in the TV version of Batman, was actually supposed to be the father of Oswald Cobblepot in Batman Returns, but he couldn't do it at the time because he was actually ill. So I thought it was interesting that they were going to try to tie that in, but instead we actually got Pee Wee Herman to play that role, which
I was going to say, do you remember who played it?
Yeah, Pee Wee Herman, because he also shows up in the TV series Gotham as I think as Penguin's father, actually. Yeah. So I think it's interesting, like how it flipped over there.
And if I'm not mistaken, Tim Burton, I know it directed at least one Pee Wee Herman movie. Like Pee Wee's Big Top Adventure.
Yeah, I think it was Big Adventure. Yeah.
The one about the circus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like he was, I guess there are a lot of actors that work with certain directors, and Tim Burton has his group, like Danny DeVito's in a lot of his stuff. Johnny Depp has been in a lot of his stuff.
Right.
So, but Paul Rubens has been part of that troupe and shows up there in Batman Returns kind of unexpectedly.
Right. Yeah.
Now, was this before or after Paul Rubens made his star-studded return in Blow?
This is way before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe this might be, so if we think about it, this might be the catapult that got him into that role. So if he didn't show up in here and it had been the original Penguin, we would never have gotten God, what was his name in Blow? It's a great name too.
I don't think I've seen that movie, so I can't help you.
Derek for real. There it is. Derek for real. Who also, I mean, look, the name because it pops up in like rap songs and stuff. Like, I think it's in a JC song, like Derek for real.
That's awesome. Well, and
I don't know why this retains this stuff. I don't understand why I hold on to this stuff.
Well, he was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a kid watching that, he's almost unrecognizable. Like as an adult, I realized who it is. But as a kid in 1994, when that movie came out, I was like, is that Pee Wee Herman?
Because you're expecting the bow tie.
I probably didn't realize it then. Yeah. His delivery is so as Pee Wee is so like unique that I would have, if I was famous for something like that, I would have a hard time like not sneaking that into other roles.
Right.
The way that the Dwayne Johnson like raises his eyebrow. Yeah, like he does. There's some things that you do purposefully, but I mean, it would be hard for him to just be Derek for real and go
right.
So,
wait a second. Wait. Hold on. I don't want to contradict that previous line, but so you're saying that he couldn't fit into what was it a flamboyant Coke dealer in California who owns a salon? He could
probably do that one, but maybe less so as like the vampire minion in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
That's fair.
There are some roles that it fits well with, and Derek for real probably was a bad example because it fits well with that one.
I thought about it for a second. I was like, wait a second.
I would love to see a movie, and we're going way off topic, but I would love to see a movie where he played another character, like where he played like the straight man character, and then as part of that character, he had to like go undercover as Pee Wee Herman. I think that would be great.
Right. So the next Batman film fact I have is, you remember in Batman Returns, the final shot of Catwoman looking at the bat signal? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Quite iconic.
Apparently that scene, two things that's interesting about that. They had to spend $250,000 just to film that scene alone. And it's not even Michelle Pfeiffer who's playing Catwoman in that scene.
Wow.
Yeah. They had to get a
was it reshoots and she just wasn't available?
She wasn't available, yeah. So they had to get a body double to stand in for her. But $250,000 just for that scene? Like I kind of wanted to look deeper and be like, why did it cost that much for that scene? Like, that's really interesting.
Well, how much did it cost? Wasn't it like $2 to $4 million to get the mustache removed from what Cavill?
They should have spent double that. True.
Yeah.
Delay the release of that movie another 3 months and take your time erasing the mustache.
I honestly didn't really notice it that much.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
but
it
I've
was
also
just
only watched it
creepy. I
once
mean,
too. So
I think because I knew you go in knowing, and I remember the opening of Justice League, and anyone who complains about spoiler alerts, you call me, it's fine. The opening of Justice League is like those kids that he saves, and like he flies in, and he's like, it's like, it's like a found video recording, right? Because he's dead or whatever. And it's like a, you know, supposed to be like a very montage, like sad moment or whatever, like Superman's dead. But like, it's so awkward. Like his lips look so weird. And I remember sitting in the theater being like, oh, this is not good. This is going to be bad. And then luckily it wasn't in a ton of scenes, but it was bad. The ones we saw.
Yeah. I now that you mentioned that, I did remember noticing that at the front, and I was like, oh my gosh, you could tell that was digitized. But then like everything else, I don't know if I just like, you know, pushed it out of my memory or out of my consciousness or what, but I felt like I didn't really notice after that. So maybe it was just so bad. I was just like, I'm just going to ignore it. Kind of like how your eyes ignore your nose. Like I was just ignoring Cavill's upper lip.
I think
that point.
a lot of us bury our trauma as you know that we experience, and we have a hard time recollecting it. Yeah, so it's understandable, Sean.
Right.
You had a lot of therapy to get you past that.
Yeah. Next, do you know who was originally slated to play the role of Riddler in Batman Forever? I'm going to ask you to and see if you know this. I'm sure you do.
I think I know. What about you, Michael?
I think I know, but I'm thinking I'm going to wait. There's one that I'm thinking of, but I think he was also offended because of original Batman. But might be.
I think you're right, Michael. Yeah.
So I'm thinking of Robin Williams.
Yeah. Yep.
Who was supposed to play the Joker? Or no, it wasn't supposed to play the Joker. He was used as bait, right? And he was offended, and he was like, "Forget this."
Yeah, I think they used him as a way to like negotiate for Jack Nicholson or something like that. But then they tried to bring him in for the Riddler, and I guess he turned it down. One of the reasons, I don't know if this is the sole reason, but one of the reasons that he thought the role wasn't comedic enough, like how Frank Gorshin's was in the TV series. So I thought that was really interesting. And then The Dark Knight, Christian Bale's known for his really raspy voice in that movie and the next one. Apparently, that's not all natural. Apparently, that was enhanced in post-production by the audio mixing team. So Christian Bale is not 100% at fault for that. And then subsequent,
it's like the one thing that's wrong with that movie.
Yeah. But you know what? He's got three films of doing that voice, and it's still not as distracting as Superman's mustache.
Yeah. Well, I think the first one wasn't
I'll give
too
him
bad.
a pass.
Yeah, the first one wasn't too bad, but the Dark Knight Rises just kind of incrementally got worse at that point.
Anytime anybody says "I swear to God," I just say "Swear to me."
Yeah. Well, but I'll say like that is a memorable.
Where are they?
Yeah.
No, I think what was I gonna say? Yeah, whoever did the audio on those films should not work in movies ever again. Because I mean, remember the original clips of Bane that came out, and it was like you couldn't understand what he was saying. And then like even when it came out now, I love that they parried him in the Lego Batman movie. It was like, hello. And like, it's like this really like fancy British man, because it was so weird. But I remember like when the trailer came out, everyone was like, I think it's Bane, but I have no idea what he said. Like you could not hear. It was so muffled.
It sounded like they had cast Sean Connery as Charlie Brown's teacher.
Essentially.
Yeah. Wah, 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 wah.
Have you ever seen the Harley Quinn animated show, Michael?
A little bit of it, yeah.
So Bane is in that, and I absolutely love that show, but they have Bane in it, and they do a fantastic job of just parroting him the whole time and making him just one of the funniest characters. Him and Clayface. Like Clayface is hilarious. They really went all in with making fun of their own property, and they did a great job of it. And then
I love when they do that. I mean, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. No, it's fine.
No, I was gonna say I love when they do that because I think it kind of it makes you take it less serious, and I mean it should be fun at sometimes too. I mean we think of what was Bane in Batman and Robin, or was that the one before where he was part of Poison Ivy?
Batman and Robin.
He's the worst part of Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I mean it's terrible. So yeah, that was my dynamite drop, and I'm done.
And then the last Batman film fact is, and I'm sure we all know this as well too, and this is probably no surprise, but there is a producer that is on the credit for every Batman film, and that is Michael Uslan. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but what's interesting about him is that he bought the filming rights to Batman back in 1979, and he actually went to my alma mater, Indiana University. And he was really well known and got a lot of attention from Marvel and DC Comics because as a junior in undergrad, he created a college course. That's apparently the first accredited college course that's dedicated to the serious study of comic books at Indiana University. So I think he has like a lot of like history to it. And he's always been involved with the Batman films and all that. So every Batman film that you see, he is always credited as being an executive producer.
God, I mean, he's kind of like the guy who bought like 100 Bitcoin when they were like a penny each.
Yeah.
or like what was it? Where Sony bought the Spider-Man rights, or not? Sony. Yeah, Sony. Oh,
I know.
So nice.
Laughing all the way to the bank.
So those are the top 10 facts of Batman films, and what makes them top 10 is that I just picked them randomly. No qualifiers.
I think they were pretty good.
Yeah.
I think David Letterman would be impressed.
Yeah. Right.
So the next point on our discussion board here is that this is going to be the 13th live action film for Batman. Probably the most of any superhero, getting fairly close to like James Bond territory. But what do you guys think makes him so popular for films? Is it the dark and mysterious nature of the character?
I mean, it's interesting, right? When you think about it, it's hard to put a finger on it. I mean, I think it's because if you think, all right, so Spider-Man, who is the Marvel equivalent as far as popularity of Batman, right, is so popular because he's different, he's young, he appeals everyone, anyone can be, everybody wants to be him. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's the like it's just such a cool character. And what you just said, maybe it is the dark and mysterious aspect of it. But I mean, the billionaire orphan thing it's not relatable to anybody,
but
right?
maybe that's what draws us to it, is the idea that like, if I was a billionaire orphan, maybe this is what I would do. Because it's hard to actually put yourself on the shoes of that person, but we all imagine it. We all imagine what we would do if we had $1 billion. I don't know that I would fight crime. When we talked about whether or not we would want to be Batman or Iron Man, I chose Iron Man simply because I wouldn't want to have to work out. To just let the technology do the work.
Wait. You wouldn't want to do the Ben Affleck 20-minute CrossFit montage in Batman v Superman, because that is one of the best scenes in the history of film.
Is it really 20 minutes long?
I don't know. I think it felt that long.
Right. They do. Any chance they get to show somebody's abs or whatever, but I'm seriously boxing myself out of any chance of portraying a major superhero in film because of my lack of abs. I mean, they're in there somewhere, but I mean, I could play comic book guy from The Simpsons, but that's about it. But I think that is something that, like, it's kind of every kid's fantasy to maybe not be in the situation where you have the money and the power to do that, but also he has like really cool gadgets.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where, like, especially within the first 4 Batman films, each one of them had to do something to one up the last one when it comes to the suits and the gadgets and stuff. And nowhere is that more represented than the toys. Because the toys, like the different versions of Batman, supersonic Batman, stealth mode Batman, deep freeze Batman, like it just kept going and going and going. And maybe that's what ties us to it, is like the merchandise, the nostalgia of it all. And I don't know, but I think there's definitely something that draws us back in.
Well, and the desire for all of us to have a live-in old British man take care of us, have a butler.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I'm interested to see what Andy Serkis does as Alfred. But when they were talking about casting Batman, I was really hoping that it would be Daniel Craig as Alfred. Like they've kind of jumped around, with I guess it's Jeremy Irons, and then before that it was Michael
Caine.
We just talked about
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. And then and they've skewed a little bit younger with Andy Serkis, but I was kind of hoping that they would explore like Daniel Craig as Alfred, and he's got that like, secret agent kind of like background,
right,
that they allude to a lot of times in the comics and other media. But I don't know, I'm still interested to see Andy Serkis, because I think he's a brilliant actor.
Yeah, I think what makes Batman a very interesting character to do in film, that makes him very popular, is the theatrics of it all, right? I mean, think about just like what we talked about now, is the different kind of suits and gadgets that he can come up with, that he can use, that makes a lot of sense. All the villains are very theatrical. Like you have, the Joker, you have Riddler, you have Penguin, who are, living embodiments of, things or animals or stuff like that, but also has a whole lot of, philosophical approaches to it as well, too. And the fact that you can do a lot of things and tell a different story with Batman every single time, I think is really interesting. Like you have all the origin story and the things that he does that lines up. But, think about him being a detective, like that opens up a whole world of different kinds of movies that you can come and approach, right? Like, so like Ben Affleck, I love him as Bruce Wayne. I think he did a pretty good job as Batman. Not my favorite one, but I think he did a good job. And he didn't do a whole lot of detective work, other than he did some research on some super power humans and stuff like that. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity that you can dive into, a lot of characteristics of that person that makes it really interesting, that you get films like Batman 89 and Batman and Robin and The Dark Knight and, all the other ones that we have. That's just very different, but still very interesting to tell as well, too.
I think you hit it on the head when you said the villains. When you said that, like it kind of like a light bulb went in my head. I don't think there's anyone with a better rogues gallery as villains.
Right.
I mean, you listed a couple. Obviously, the ones we all know. The Joker, the Joker, Riddler, Penguin, Bane's in there as well. I think Bane's a great villain when done right. I mean, we saw it in Dark Knight Rises. It just goes on and on. I mean, it's funny. Like I try to think about Superman. I feel like he's limited, and I don't want to be overstepping here. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I feel like he's limited. We've seen in the films, and it's been tough, right? Like in Man of Steel, it was, they brought Zod in, and it's like also because Superman kind of like basically rises above everyone else. So it's like, how do you have a villain? Lex Luthor's kind of, when he's done right, he's epic. When he's done wrong, Jesse Eisenberg. And so I think it's got to be I think the villains is a big part of it. I agree.
I think what's, if you look back at like, Sean was talking about the course on the history of comic books, or like the legitimacy of comic books. One of the things that you can point to when you talk about the psychology of Batman is how each one of those villains represents like a different kind of like mental state or I guess inner turmoil. They all have some kind of inner turmoil that's manifested into this life of crime. There's, they do these BuzzFeed quizzes all the time, like which which Disney princess are you, and you answer questions and whatnot. But I think there's a lot that could go into to telling you about who you are as a person if you were to take the which Batman villain quiz are you. And I would go to say that that's probably as legitimate as like which Hogwarts house are you. Like if you took a quiz and you said which Batman villain are you, like there's some redeeming things about being Poison Ivy. I mean, you're a lover of nature and things like that.
Right.
But if you take the quiz and you're the Joker, you probably should see a mental health professional.
I was going to say that. I was like, obviously everybody wants to be the Joker, but then they think about the Joker and they're like, nah, I don't want to be the Joker.
Right. Maybe in VR.
We should do. I'd love to go around the horn. I mean, which ones do you guys think you are? Because it is a really good point.
Well,
I would probably be the Riddler.
I agree with that, actually.
You asked, I said it.
Yeah. I agree with that because I think Kevin really enjoys like coming up with like very creative, like he's a very creative person, and the Riddler is a very creative guy and coming up with like really clever clues and traps and stuff like that. So I could see Kevin being in that. For me, it's because Michael, you don't know this, but I think our listeners know this because we talk about this all the time, but I'm 6'6", and I've always just gravitated to people who are, about my size. I always love, Kingpin and, Colossus and Hulk, and characters like that. So for me, for Batman villains, like I just resonate with Bane because he was such a huge guy. I remember the first time ever came across a character Bane was I was at Half Price Books and saw the cover of Nightfall where Bane is breaking his back. I just remember thinking like, I need to read this comic. I've read part of it. I haven't finished it and I need to finish it at some point, but it was just so fascinating. I've just always gravitated to that. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. But I've always just gravitated to people, my size, just because I think there's a unique trait and challenge that goes with, larger than life people, both physically and, just the presence that they command and things like that. And especially like, that's why, not to get off subject too much, but that's why I've always liked reading about the Hulk because, I know me growing up, like people always had an assumption of me because of my size. And I've always squashed that assumption for people whenever they get to know me. But I think that's just
really
something that
a gentle giant.
Yeah. And so, but I think, I just always really love reading those stories and seeing like other people, my size and how they handle those perceptions and things like that. So.
And I'll add too that I think Bane is a good pick for you because I don't find you like very attractive at all. So like with your face mostly covered by the mask.
I'll let Sarah know you said that.
Sarah told me personally, she was like, Sean's not that good looking, but I didn't have a lot of options.
Probably.
No, she wouldn't say that. She wouldn't say that.
Not to
well, I was always impressed. I mean, I grew up with that, with the Nightfall arc. I mean, it's the upside and the downside of that era, right? The 90s where you had the death of Superman, which it's funny. I just found the omnibus for it. It's like this thick too, which is really funny.
Yeah.
And it's literally like this long. I read it in like an hour and I'm like, this is so bad. And I actually really like Doomsday. I think he's a great character. And it's such a poorly done arc, but I actually really liked Nightfall. And I always get roasted for this. Like, I was a huge fan of Bane. I still am, and I think he's a character that I was so happy to see in Dark Knight Rises. I'm like, he got such undue crap. But I also loved Azrael. I love that whole arc. And Azrael gets all the crap in the world. Like, apparently he's like the worst character. I thought he was great. Like, who doesn't want to be some guy who's like part of some ancient order of Saint Dumas and like,
right. And
then he takes over and he becomes like the Punisher version of Batman. Like, he's just killing bad guys. But I mean, it's the funny thing is I feel like it's ahead of its time because I the parallel to that I think again, it's all about things being done right. Like the Netflix shows from Marvel, I think are some of the best shows out there. And I think of that, like there's, for people who don't know, eventually Batman, Bruce Wayne comes back and takes over his mantle from Azrael because he's like lost his mind and he's just like, whatever. He's beating up Nightwing and he's whatever. But I think of the rooftop scene between Punisher and Daredevil in Daredevil season 2. And he's, they're debating what he's accomplished. And he's like, you put him down, they get out and do it. He's like, I put him down, they stay down. And like, man, John Bernthal, what a role. But I always was disappointed that people hated on that character so much. I was like, because I knew the thread of something is there. Like they're other sides of the coin, right? Of each other. Right. And then I don't know what DC did with Azrael and gave him his like Agent of Bat series, which is pretty bad and whatever.
This gives me an idea to have another conversation with Michael as a podcast. We should have Michael back in a few months and do Comics Court, where we all make our cases for like why one of like the really bad runs is better than it is.
Yeah.
I'm like, because I have one that comes to mind and I want to go off on that tangent because I want to save it for this other episode. But yeah, it's the 90s was a different time for comics.
I love that idea because we were really, it ruined comics.
It did.
Like it
did.
was saturated with the 9 covers and the variants that started. And oh man,
you say that I literally have all 4 gatefold X-Men covers on my wall, like framed right behind this microphone. So
the thing is, those are like, that's the thing is, I think it's guilty by association, right? I think it's funny, and I tend to talk in tangents, so whatever. But I was watching a documentary about Stan Lee, and I always thought he changed. Sorry, I can mute my mic. I thought he changed his name because he was Jewish, and it was in the 40s. But I found that wasn't the case. He was just so embarrassed because comics were so looked down upon at the time. Between like, I think it was in the 50s and 60s, between the times of when Superman and Batman came out, and then before Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and all that. Like, apparently anyone that was involved in comics, it was almost like you're working for like In Touch or Us Weekly.
Right.
It was like just so poorly received. And I had no idea. I thought he changed his name because of World War II and stuff. Like I know he fought in the war, and I was like, oh, I just figured, anti-Semitism and stuff. But
he was trying to preserve Lieber for a real gig
for his professional.
Yeah. He was looking to leave.
Yeah,
he was looking to leave comics. That's everyone knows that famous story. Like before the Fantastic Four, he was done. But I think of the same thing with the 90s. Like, there are iconic people that came out of it. You mentioned X-Men. Jim Lee is just
nobody better.
Yeah, he did a great Batman run. Like the X-Men run's fantastic. I think Liefeld, his drawings are a little whatever, but the characters, no one can deny the characters he created, in his run as well. And so I think, there's so many bad things in there, but there's so many good things too. And it just, it's annoying when stuff gets buried in with it.
And I will tell you specifically about the Death of Superman. The DC animated Death of Superman film is amazing. Really? It's excellent. Really? I openly wept at it because of the emotion that it touches on. And and he's my favorite character. You can see in my microphone there. But yeah, like we should make this a series. Yeah. We're just going to have Michael back and we're going to talk 90s comics. We'll do Comic Court and we'll get into all of these things that we can't squeeze into this Batman conversation.
We do British, like we're each the
we will all wear powdered wigs.
Yeah, the barristers have to wear. I've always wanted to do that. So you could fulfill my dreams if we could do that.
Okay. Deal.
Well, let's go one better.
Did they have that at
everybody?
PopCon?
Say what?
No, you know what? It was at Comic Palooza. At Comic Palooza this last year, they had Comics Court, where they had 3 people like wearing like the powdered wigs, and you could go and stand in front of them and make your case for some like pop culture opinion that you had, and if they agreed with you or whatever, they would like give you a small prize or something. It was actually quite hilarious.
That's great.
Yeah, I think I think that's a common thing at a lot of Comic Cons because I remember I didn't attend one, but I remember reading about one. I was like, oh, that'd be cool to see. And I think wasn't that PopCon at Indianapolis, but I think it was a Comic Con. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, this last summer I went to those two like 2 weeks apart, so it kind of all blends together.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have one more point, or did you want to we want to move on?
I can't remember what it was.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So next bullet point: which Batman movie has set the standard for all Batman films?
I gotta go Dark Knight. I don't think anything. I think someone way smarter than me. I'll preface it with that. Years ago, way smarter than me. Sat me down and explained to me how the Dark Knight changed films, and so much so, I think at some point he said, and this has been overused, said that it might have ruined superhero films because of what it did, but that it wasn't a superhero film. And again, this is not my take. It's again, someone much smarter than me. It was a very good crime noir film that just happened to have superheroes in it. So it wasn't like an X-Men film, or it wasn't, you could take those characters out and it'd still be a very good film. Mm-hmm. And I think that really is what ushered in the MCU and what we see today. And yeah, God, what a movie. I mean,
I think it does speak to the need for, or the how they got it right with the character specific stakes that are appropriate. Like he wasn't trying to save the world. He was trying to save Gotham from this madman. But you know, I take this this argument to a lot of films. Like, why the hell is the Suicide Squad trying to save the world in the first Suicide Squad movie when Batman and Superman and these superpowered humans exist? Why are we scraping the bottom of the barrel? Like, it's just I can understand them going and overthrowing a dictator, but not saving the world. And it just, they got the tone and the stakes correct in at least the first two films. The third one is my favorite, but it's a little bit, you got atomic bombs and stuff like that, and so the stakes are a little bit higher. But they are appropriate for the character. Like, Batman is a billionaire. He's not going to save the world, drop kicking people, and especially when he's got Superman on his team.
Right.
Well, yeah, I also think of oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I also think you made a good point too, where you're like, he's going to save Gotham, and it's the stakes are dead on too. Where I think of, and now I'm losing my train of thought, but it was along that lines where, oh my God, what was I going to say? All right, well, I pass on that. Yeah.
It's cool. I mean, I think I love Superman, and I'm not going to apologize for it. I love the Justice League cartoons and stuff, when they finally got them together, in the mid to late 90s. But I think that, Batman's always viewed as one of the leaders of the Justice League. And I think as a character, one of the things that would make him more believable would be what, this is a job for Superman. And I think for a while DC has had a problem with trying to interject Batman into a lot of their storylines because he's their most popular character, but he's oftentimes really, really out of place because a person with superpowers could handle this much better.
Well, right. The point is Batman v Superman, where he obviously is. It's the movie of a million memes, where he's when they're fighting Doomsday, and he's just kind of like, what are you doing? But what do you do in that situation if you're him? And so it's kind of, I think that was that. And I think if you go on the other side of the coin of most disappointing Batman film, in my opinion, because I've seen Batman v Superman, I've seen it a lot. And I've seen the extended cut. And there was plans. I had plans to do another series years ago, and so there's other reasons, and not since I love the movie. It's just that it had a lot of potential, and whether it's Zack Snyder doing what he wanted to do, or executives at Warner Brothers who probably butchered it as well. There's parts in there you're like, oh, this could be good. They had a really good like cerebral film they could have made, and there was a lot of parallels with fathers and sons and stuff in there they really could have done, and then they just made this mismatch weird film, and so that's for me is the other side of the coin where it's the most disappointing, because
it sets the standard for bad Batman films.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Batman and Robin set the standard for that one.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
I remember taking my son to see, like Kathy and I took Madden to see Batman v Superman when it came out, because it came out right around his birthday, and honestly, like for the nature of the film, he was probably a little bit too young for it, but he's always been into like the superhero stuff, and he was 6 at the time and came out of the movie theater and was like, that was not very good. like what did they do to Clark? Like they made Clark a whiny emo kid, and like my argument for that film is that like they try to, instead of having the juxtaposition between their two characters, they set them on this path where they kind of merged into one. And the great thing about Man of Steel was they focused on like the experience that made Clark feel human, and you got none of that in the next film. And I will make the case that Zack Snyder specifically, like he's a brilliant filmmaker, but I think, his wife is also the executive producer that handles the business side of everything, or the producer that handles the business side of it. I don't think that there are enough people in Zack Snyder's camp telling him no, like this is a bad idea. Like when you wear the umbrella hat that you get the final say on all of it, I don't think there are enough people being like, I don't think this works, Zack. And I think that was the result of that film.
Well, you're dead on, because I mean, I think I've always said, where was the guy in the room when he was like, I got an idea? Did you guys realize that both Bruce and Clark's mom is Martha? And so, I don't want to hear the garbage explanation afterwards that it's a revelation and he realizes that Clark's a human and blah. It's a bad idea. Like I would have been like, if I was in the screening room, I've been like, Zach, no, no. And I would have been like, we're not going to do this. Because there is a good, to your point, if they had kept it a parallel, again, to me, something that always came out of that I like the line where he's like, this is my world, you're my world at the end, when he goes to sacrifice himself, because I feel like Clark is more human than even Bruce. And I also, to the point, there was a little bit of a tease in there, which I'm disappointed they didn't explore as well. When Jesse Eisenberg talked about, he mentioned something about like furious fists of father or something like that. So obviously he had a really rough childhood. And I think they could have gone again. It felt like it could have been a movie about maybe fathers and sons, and kind of paralleling all these different outcomes. And I would have liked to have seen somewhere at the end. I was in my head, I don't know how they would have did it, because he just can't do it. But like almost Bruce sacrificing himself and realizing for Clark to be like, this is your world, it's not really mine. And knowing that he's kind of an outcast. This guy's way more human and way more pure than he'll ever be. And being like, this is the guy who should be around. But I mean, whatever. That's thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I think, Michael, I'll have to say that I agree with you about The Dark Knight being the standard for all Batman movies, because I think that just kind of what Batman 89 did for, Batman films, what Superman has done for all superhero films, what Iron Man has done for the MCU. I think The Dark Knight just puts it on a level where probably for the first time superhero movies could be taken seriously as a film. And I think you hit it right on the mark in that, this was not a superhero movie, but this was a psychological thriller, crime noir is what you said, that also happen to have superhero. And I think that's what made it such a, great success, is because the Joker in this movie wasn't, comical the same way Jack Nicholson was, or even Oscar Romero, I'm sorry, Cesar Romero. And it was just more of the, psychopathic reality that somebody could be like this in real life, and that this was a realistic kind of film, that, this kind of thing could just happen if somebody had, a very traumatic experience and just wasn't supported. And I think that's what kind of led to the making of Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, is because they explored that, because there's such an interesting part of the villain that they wanted to explore, that was actually, as disturbing as it was for me, it was still a very good film, because they were able to explore the psychological piece that kind of was a lens on society. And I think that's what The Dark Knight had done, is that it really superseded and redeemed, Batman film after what happened with Batman and Robin. I'm just going to harp on Batman and Robin this whole episode, but I think it just really puts at another plane that just elevated so much that not a lot of other superhero genre films have been able to touch yet.
I remembered what my point was going to be about 30 minutes ago.
That's too bad. We got to move on to the next bullet point now.
Damn.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. So with what Sean was talking about, that jarred the memory, which is great. So essentially, you were talking about it. Obviously, Kevin, you were talking about stakes, and Sean was talking about, obviously, the Joker. And when you said stakes, it made me think of it like the Badge of a Great Movie is something that makes you think about it for like hours later, days later, months later. Like when I saw Spider-Man, No Way Home, the more I saw it, the more I thought about these different things, that these different things that were like so cerebral to me that like I didn't realize till later on, like Captain America fighting on top of Captain America's shield symbolizes Spider-Man becoming he's now going to be the new Captain America. Basically, he's not thinking like Doctor Strange or Tony. It's just crazy. The scene with the two boats.
Yes.
My God, where you have, and I remember reading, I think it was like a Forbes article after it came out, and they interviewed the actor. I forgot his name, but he played Debo. The
Tiny Lister.
Yes, and so. And he said that he was in like a rap party or something, and he had to go up to him and talk to him because that scene resonated so much. And talk about a precursor, 2008, and just that obviously the old adage, don't judge a book by its cover. But I remember reading this like really well-written article where he just went up to him. He was like, I didn't see that coming. Like the fact that, that line where he's like, give it to me and I'll do what you should have done. He throws it out the window. Man, what a scene. And so I think, again, the stakes where it's super focused on like 2,000 people or something on these two things, but just that, it's relatable to everyone, and just what like a message, but then at the same time, it had you thinking about it I still think about it now. I'm like, who came up with that? Great work.
Oh yeah.
So the next, I think that we could go on forever to talk about those things. What scene or character of the Batman franchise is the most memorable for you? I'll go first.
Go ahead. Yeah,
because we've been picking on Batman and Robin. I will say the most redeeming thing about Batman and Robin for me, and this may be the hormones of a 15-year-old talking, but I was a big Alicia Silverstone fan. So when she showed up as Batgirl, even though in my heart of hearts I knew like that's not Batgirl. Batgirl's Barbara Gordon.
Right.
Man, she just like, I don't know, I guess at the time, and even looking back on it, she's very beautiful, and she's not without like charisma or whatever, but the part's not very well written. But she was her and the dynamic between her and Robin, I thought was probably one of the better parts of that movie. And And I'm not gonna lie, I probably had like the like there was a lot of advertisements with the movie. Sean and I talked about this the other night. There was a lot of product placement, blatant product placement, but also there were advertisements in print media and stuff where the characters were featured, and I'm fairly certain that I had like the Alicia Silverstone Batgirl milk ad, because they all did that.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that I used to like take I had in my house I grew up in, I had wood paneling on the walls, and I hated it. So I would just take Sports Illustrated, and anytime there was like a full page picture of Sports Illustrated, not the swimsuit issue because my mom would have had my neck for that. But I loved all the athletes and the full spread pictures. But like I remember having a lot of those milk ads in my room, and I know that hers was one of it because I had a huge crush on her.
It's a pretty good one though.
Yeah. I
Well, and I think we owe it to Batman and Robin to say at least some nice things about it.
Here's the thing. I will say there were a couple of good things about that movie. One was George Clooney did have that great line about this is why Superman works alone. Like that was good. That was a good line. That was funny. The other thing I did like about that movie that we didn't get a whole lot in other movies or even media necessarily, maybe Gotham, but in that movie, you do see a lot of flashbacks of how Alfred really became his, what's the word I'm looking for? Surrogate figure after the death of his parents. And he had a lot of, really fond memories of that, when they thought that Alfred was going to die and stuff like that. So I thought they actually did a really good job of highlighting that and cinematically being able to work that in. That was very, heartfelt and touching. Other than that, so, but I will say, Michael,
isn't it weird? We're talking about the most memorable, and maybe Batman and Robin is the most memorable just for how bad it is.
Yeah,
like
it's only most memorable for me though because I just watched it.
He slid on a dinosaur. Yeah.
Honestly, if I hadn't watched it, I wouldn't remember any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think aside from the two in the scene that I just brought up with from the Dark Knight, I also think another scene that sticks in my mind from the Dark Knight really, really well is, and again, I think it affects you more than just from a movie level, where it makes you think about storytelling in general. And I work in content, so obviously, but his explanation of the scars throughout that film, where one, it's true to the character because the character has no backstory, right? The character just showed up out of nowhere, and in most of the original, origin story, he's doesn't have an origin. He just is there, and he's just this, so Batman 89 actually made that up. The whole Jack Napier thing was just, originated. But I thought that was interesting. But I also thought it was just kind of like, I was like, oh, wow, you can play with the audience like this. Like, this is so cool and different. And we've never seen, I think we got it, the unreliable narrator kind of a thing where, again, it makes you think about it. You're like, whoa, damn, how did he get those scars? Like, what you want to know to what, Sean said earlier about going into, the Joker movie. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, people were dying to know this backstory. And I think that really resonated with me and stuck with me and had you kind of like, like almost like a wink and a nod to the audience. And it's like, I'll never tell.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, Michael, that you actually took my favorite scene, you mentioned my favorite scene, which was that scene of the two boats in the Dark Knight, because I think that was something that was just a very powerful scene that could be analyzed from a lot of different lens in terms of, thriller, in terms of philosophical, in terms of, preconceived notions and stereotypes and things like that. And I think they just did a great job of giving you something that was authentic and real that we don't get to see a lot of times in superhero films. Not that you don't, but not to that extent, which is again why I think The Dark Knight is probably one of the gold standards of the Batman films and superhero films as well too. But in addition to that, I will say that something that's very nostalgic for me and very memorable is two things real quick. Is one, I think we'll never forget the shark repellent in the 1966 Batman movie. Like that will never go away. And that movie was also like corny. It wasn't. I think Kevin mentioned this, and some other people have mentioned this as well too. Is that Batman and Robin tried to be like what 1966 was, and I think it just failed miserably. But when I watch it, like it was funny because there was a scene where they just made these huge leaps and bounds of assumptions about what villains were involved. It was like so ridiculous, but at the same time, that series was ridiculous too. So it kind of lived up to its name. But the other thing that I really love that is most memorable for me is Batman Returns, when we see the Batmobile going in between that really tight two buildings, and it just like shut off its sides and became like almost like a missile on wheels. Like that'll always stick out to me as like something that was just really cool to see on screen that you didn't even realize you wanted to see, but he's like, oh my gosh, like what else can this guy think of? To adapt to like any situation that you wouldn't be expecting at that point, right? So I always thought that was a really cool scene in that movie.
Another one that sticks with me, and I don't know if it would like, it's funny now that I don't know why I think you just jarred it loose when you said Batman Returns, is the end scene with Michelle Pfeiffer, where she gets shot like 7 times by Christopher Walken and just keeps going. And she's like, I have 8 lives left, 7, 6. And then she like, have a kiss, Auntie Claus. That's a one that you remember too, as like a kid. It just shocks you. Like, this is so different and unique. Aside from obviously Christopher Walken lives in your nightmares for the rest of your life, right? Aside from that, yeah.
Well, and Danny DeVito being like literally a penguin, which I think was probably one of the first times we've seen an interpretation of the penguin like that.
Danny DeVito lives in my nightmares from that.
Right? Especially that scene where
he lives in
like,
my nightmares for that movie.
When he dies at the end, he just has all that cold blue blood coming out from him. You're just like, this is odd and definitely on par for Tim Burton.
But also kind of sad too. When like the penguins are surrounding him as like an animal lover.
Oh, I know.
Like, oh, it's a redeeming moment. Like,
yeah.
Oh, poor guy.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to head into a rapid round to change the pacing a little bit, and we maybe not discuss each one of these things so much, but we're going to go through a couple of questions, and we're just going to give our answers, and it's all stuff centered around Batman and our favorite thing, or the thing that we remember most. So we're going to kick it off with the most overrated Batman movie. Sean, you go first.
I can go first. I will say right now, Zack Snyder's Justice League. I thought it was okay. I don't think it was as great as everybody. I think everybody was comparing it to the original one. But I don't think it was that great.
Michael?
I mean, to be different, because I would agree with that. To be different, I would say the Batman, because apparently I saw it last night. I think it's good. And all these outlets that are saying you're a new favorite Batman and it's a revelation, this and that, it's not. Okay. Like, it's good. It is very good. And I don't know if I'm going to see it again. I don't know if I'm jumping to conclusions or whatnot, but there are some storyline issues. And so it is not The Dark Knight. And for anyone who's saying that, it's just probably too young to remember The Dark Knight, or just go watch it again. Yeah. Please do me a favor. Yeah.
And I will say that all the Batman films are exactly rated where exactly they should be. Like, the ones that suck rightfully suck, and then the ones that are good are rightfully good. So I guess that ruins my answer for the next question. I guess I've given it to you. The most underrated Batman movie, which I just said, they're all exactly placed on the scale where they should be. But I will say that that I yeah, I would say that because my favorite is The Dark Knight Rises, that it's probably underrated.
Mm-hmm.
I would go and say, and kind of contradict myself a little bit from earlier, because I think it's a better Batman film than it is a Superman film. Say Batman v Superman, just for the fact that the warehouse scene, just for that one warehouse scene, which is the scene we've all wanted for so long.
Right.
And I think you can get a little bit of that with the Batman coming out next week. But yeah.
Are you talking about like the scene where he just beats everybody mercilessly?
And they takes the knife out. Yeah, I mean, again, the mass murder, the serial killer that is Batman in that movie. I think they did they've done a bunch of video counts. I think he killed I'm Kevin, I'm breaking your rules and go on tangents, but I think he murdered like 43 people in that movie. The count, yeah. Broke his code. Broke his code.
I have to agree with you, Michael. I think that Batman versus Superman was an underrated Batman movie. I don't think it was a great movie, but I think what that did for what Ben Affleck was able to do with Bruce Wayne and Batman was very different than what we've seen before, and that we get a more like seasoned, Batman and everything like that. So I again, not the greatest movie at all, but I think it doesn't get the love it deserves either. So
that's reasonable. All right. Favorite actor to play Batman?
Bale.
I'm going to go with Ben Affleck.
Whoa!
And I'm going to stun you all.
Do not say George Clooney.
Yes, I have to.
Get out of here.
No, listen. George Clooney gets a bad rap because of how bad that movie was and how bad the writing was and how bad the acting, or not the acting, the directing is. But I grew up loving the Batman the animated series, and he looked and talked the most like that Batman, and that's the one that I prefer. And I'm going to stick to it. Our favorite actor to play Batman is George Clooney. And you can't tell me that my answer is wrong because it's an opinion.
No, respect. I think I saw one time someone talked about, they said Val Kilmer was their favorite. And I respect that too. Val, he was like middle ground. He wasn't terrible, wasn't great.
Yeah.
I will say that when Val Kilmer turned down Batman and Robin to go make The Saint, the best decision he could have ever made. Because number one, Batman and Robin is again terrible for the 17th time on the show. But also The Saint is genuinely one of my most favorite movies of all time.
The Saint.
Mm-hmm.
Never gets old.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Favorite villain?
Mine is Bane. Dark Knight Rises. I think he was great.
I don't want to say the Joker. I actually really liked I can't say his name. Scarecrow.
Oh yeah.
Cillian Murphy. Yeah.
Cillian Murphy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also love Peaky Blinders. So yeah, I would say Scarecrow. I loved his, I mean, you'll like this. I thought his drop in Dark Knight Rises was great. And actually I thought his little cameos were fantastic. Yeah. I love the opening of the Dark Knight where he's like, what is this? The line is like, I don't need any help. He's like, that's not my diagnosis. Like I really liked him as a kind of a comic relief.
And I will say my favorite so far has been Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, simply because of the complexity of the character as the will she turn good? Is she really all that bad? And I like the way that they played that in that film. And I would love to have seen them revisit that at some point. And I have high hopes that the Batman does that character justice.
Mm-hmm.
Can I replace mine now with Halle Berry's Catwoman?
Isn't she the hero? Isn't she the hero in that movie though?
That basketball scene. There's never a better scene in history.
True. Yep.
All right. Favorite Bat vehicle?
Mine is the
Does it get any better?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sean.
No, go ahead.
No, you go.
I'm not going to say
Does
anything.
It get any better than does it get any better than the scene in the 1989 Batman where he's in the Batjet and he cuts through the clouds and stops in front of the moon and then drops back down?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Yes, the Batwing, 1989, and he had the little scissors. Again, how would he have known that his Batwing would need to have scissors to cut all these gas-filled balloons? But yeah, the Batwing, like I feel like nothing has really touched as cool as that vehicle.
Him and Alfred are just like hanging out like mechanics underneath there. And they're like, what else can we fit in here?
Right.
Swiss Army knife, Alfred, put it in. I will say also a close second for me is the Batcopter from the old 1966 Batman.
That is cool. Yeah.
The Batcopter is just cool. It's a coolness factor. I mean, the Batmobile from that show, all the Batmobiles have some cool factor to it. But the Batcopter for that one is pretty great. The Batboat, like all of the stuff that was from the 66 show was pretty great.
Yeah. You got a little bit of everything in that one.
I gotta go with Bale's motorcycle, like it can drive sideways and stuff in the Dark Knight, where it's like he's like trying to pivot and he's like like that. I mean, if the Batwing from '89 is off the table, I would go Bale's Bat Cycle.
It's taken.
That is a cool vehicle.
Also, that whoop, 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 whoop thing. Kudos to you for being able to replicate the whoop, 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 whoop sound. But also, those are the reasons why people win Oscars for sound editing.
Yes.
Because how would you know like what to make that sound like?
Yes.
Like that's somebody at a party. He was like just like telling a story and he made that noise with his mouth. Whoop, 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 whoop. And he was like, hey, can you do that again? I'm going to use this for the Batman movie. Favorite Bat gadget?
I think for me, it is the remote control Batarang in Batman Returns.
Okay.
You all do not seem impressed by that at all.
Gadgets.
Well, I think I'm just so deep in thought trying to think of what mine's going to be. It's so tough.
Well, you know what's another cool one is the Batman Forever. You know, Val Kilmer wearing the crazy like lenses that pop out of his cowl, and he throws the boomerang to hit the whatever the mind sucking machine. I feel like there's a lot of gadgets that you don't focus on in the movies because they only make like a quick appearance, with the exception of like the grappling hook gun. You know, but there's a lot of them. They just but they're functional and they're cool for 5 seconds, and then you don't see them ever again.
I'll tell you one of the bad gadgets that I like that saved the day. How about the bat card from Batman and Robin?
Don't leave home without it.
Don't leave home without it. It saved the day. No limit on that one either.
Oh my gosh. I am fighting people on TikTok about that movie.
That is like the most unlikely thing if you think about it. Number one, how does Batman have a credit report? And number two, if he's got a sorry, I hit my microphone. If he's got a card, he's got a billing statement. This is before the internet, so they had to mail the bill somewhere. Like he either has a Batman card as Bruce Wayne, which gives it away, or they know Batman's address, which is Bruce Wayne's house, which gives it away. That is a fallacy that the movie we should just find all remaining copies of it and burn it to the ground now.
I'm gonna go the Bat Sonar from the Dark Knight. That was pretty cool.
Oh, that was cool. Yeah.
Where he turned all the cell phones into sonar, and also the ending is a little I don't want to call it nebulous, where he's like, type your name in. So I guess he knew Lucius would be like, I'm not gonna do this, and so then it destroys itself or whatever. And I was like, it's a little, we'll see,
right?
Because if I'm Lucius Fox, I'm like, all right, cool, let's do this. Like not like, oh, this is wrong. He's not Edward Snowden. I mean, all right.
Yeah. Well, then for Morgan Freeman at the end of it, like he was adamantly against it. And then when that happened, he like did that smile, like, yeah, this is the right thing. Like I think his character would have still been pissed about this. Like, no, this doesn't make up for it.
Yeah.
Because then you could just do it all over again and use it again when you need it.
Well, it's like he's very careful with the wording, right? Like, it's like, as long as this is at Wayne Enterprises, I won't be. And he's like, oh, well, after this mission's over, it's all going to be taken down. Don't worry. And I'm like,
by the way, I set up a separate corporation for this purpose now.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. That was the rapid round. And this is one of those conversation's been so great. It's going to be a supersized episode of the Caption Life. But before we wrap things up, what do you guys think the biggest difference between the Batman and the other films we've had so far? And then Michael, you've already seen it, but I'm interested I guess we wrote the outline before Michael had a chance to see it.
You know, I was actually going to say, Kevin, like we could probably leave this question off just because one, like Michael have seen it, and two, like there's, the more I think about it, like there's nothing for us to really base this on other than like irresponsible speculation. So we could just leave this off.
Yeah.
So I'm good.
I think it's interesting to think about the evolution, right? I mean, I think if you think about the original movies, having seen the original one, well, not the original one because the 66 is the original, but like 89 recently, and being like, it's still a good movie. And then knowing where that devolved to over 3 or 4 movies, the first 2 were great. And then we had The Dark Knight, and then now we have this. It's kind of like, where can you go from here, right? I think I was shocked and surprised and impressed with No Way Home, in the sense of how it made you think about things and how you'll get something out of it. It's funny now that I watch, like, as I've started to go back and watch the original Spider-Man movies, watch the original X-Men movies, and a lot of them are good and still hold up. But they're just where we've evolved to today, where we have, and I don't mean like the MCU hidden eggs things, like, 'cause that's in there too, but more of like how they make you think, and how these movies, like, you go home and you're like, I remember like leaving The Dark Knight, and I remember I went and saw my roommate, in 2008, and I remember leaving the theater, and my roommate was like, what the hell just happened? And we like kind of went home and probably just sat in our respective rooms for like an hour thinking about what just happened. And it's just impressive. And but I also don't know what you do from there, right? Like, where do you go? I think we got into that trope with the Snyderverse, where everything was dark and gritty, and then the executives wanted it lighter, and then we know that was not the right move. And so I think there's an open-ended thing where, like, what do we want in the future heading? I don't know. What haven't we gotten so far that we want?
And the thing is that they've been telling Batman stories for like 85 years at this point.
Right.
And there's a lot to choose from if you're going to adapt from the comics. But I think that there are certain people that expect something new and something fresh, and you run the risk of betraying the source material by doing anything nuanced or different to it. But I think it's important that we have, if Batman is going to continue to be something that is in the forefront of, I guess, mixed media, like with, in films and television and comics and everything else, that you do give the people who tell the stories some leeway to tell the story that they want to tell. But I mean, I know which ones resonate for me because of the story and the character development and things like that. And I'm hoping that this next one kind of offers you the same thing, that at least it gives you, I mean, I don't need to see Martha be shot again and drop all of her pearls, but like for you to understand like the motivations of the characters and things like that. Michael, do you have any? Oh, Sean, you were about to say something, and the delay just cut you off.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say we can just kind of jump into asking Michael about non-spoiler thoughts about the Batman,
Yeah.
um, the film, not the
Michael,
evolution
you've
of it. So
seen the
yeah,
movie.
Mhm.
Yeah. Michael,
Yeah.
you've seen the movie, so tell us your non-spoiler thoughts on the Batman.
I think it's good. I think I said this before. It feels like a ride. It's an experience. I mean, coming out of it, it's very long. So, I mean, I think we had this going into Batman v Superman, right? Wasn't that like a 2:45 movie? And that was even short from the Snyder cut was like over 3 hours. And coming out of it, I remember, like I said, I went with a friend and she's always very optimistic about films. She fully gets consumed by a film, and so it's great to go with her in the sense that she will crack up at the funny moments and she will bawl her eyes out, much like in No Way Home in the middle of that movie, or in other movies too. And she surprised me. She didn't like it, and she was kind of like, it was too long. It was drawn out. It feels like a comic book. So I say this in a good way. I think some people are going to love it. Some people are not. It's a very long, very action packed, different movie. It's very different. It's not like the Affleck movie we just saw, or Affleck Batman we just saw. I liked it. I need to see it again to digest it. But there are some major, and maybe I missed it, kind of getting wrapped up in it. I need to see it again. Some major storyline things that kind of fell flat for me. So that would be my downside things. But I think the casting has been good. I will tell you now, and this is non-spoiler. I think you're going to feel good about Catwoman. You were mentioning that earlier. I really liked her as Catwoman. The standout for me, Colin Farrell is the best Penguin I think we'll ever see in our lifetime. He's amazing, and I really hope. I'm like so careful not to say anything to spoil anything. Like, because if you don't say something, like, oh, okay, like I can say like Batman doesn't die. Like, is that a spoiler?
I'd hope,
but I think that
not.
right. Like, so that's, you can say that with confidence, but other characters you want to be careful of. But I do hope we see more of Colin Farrell in the future, because he was really good. And I think the loudest audible responses I saw were from his character and some of his lines. And obviously there's a lot going on. So that's another thing too. So it's an experience. It is a lot. I think some people are going to have a little bit overwhelmed with how much is going on, because of all the characters and all that's going on. I tend to lean on the side. I think you guys are both going to like it. And I liked it. I came out of it, and some of the action scenes I thought were some of the best I've seen in years. And it was cool. I mean, we've all seen that scene in the trailer where he's getting shot and just like going. I love that, even though I don't know how realistic that is. Like, where he's, I don't know where the reality is from, like Keaton getting shot and they think he's dead in the original Batman. Obviously the armor protects him, but he like still falls back. And then this one who looks like almost like Captain America and Batman, he's just kicking people, whatever. And he's like a machine gun's not even affecting him. So I think, I love that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff gets me going. So I think it's a very good movie, and I think I just talked too much, so I'll shut up now. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I know they talked about.
I was going to move on, Sean. You go ahead and finish that thought.
No, that's fine. Let's go ahead and move on. We're running like almost 2 hours, so that's fine.
We've all kind of like touched on our favorite Batman films. Like I said, mine was the Dark Knight Rises. And I don't think I could tell you specifically why I like it so much, other than it maybe was like the ending of the story. Like I like the Return of the Jedi the best when it comes to Star Wars films. So maybe just like the closure that it brought. But we asked some followers on Reddit, right, Sean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We asked some people to give us their thoughts. And so Sean's got those, and he's going to share what a couple of you guys out there in the multiverse had to say.
Yes, and actually, we had one person on Instagram give an answer as well too when I posted it in our story, and so I'm going to read that person. That's actually one of our buddies, Kevin Rossi, who said his favorite is Batman Begins because it's such a departure visually from the previous films. Gotham felt real and horrifying at the same time. So, and then on Reddit we have. Matches Malone 1994 said The Dark Knight was their favorite. In fact, he or she, I don't know people's genders here from the username and all that, so I'm just going to say they. In fact, they often have a difficult time deciding amongst the trilogy. They think all three are great for different reasons, in their opinion, pretty equal, but they think that The Dark Knight pulls ahead. They think it's the first time a comic book movie really stood out as a top shelf film, and it's literally still the measuring stick, which is what we've been talking about all night. So, Old Thompson 1928 said 1989 all the way 100%. It blends everything they personally like about Batman, Gothic / 1930s 40s style mixed with modern style, like the animated series did. The Joker is serious yet comical, which is how they think he should be. Plus, the Batmobile to be in live action to date. Let's see here. Cadillac B said Keaton changed the whole series, but they do have like the 49 serial plus all the others is what they enjoyed most about that. Final Gum Gum said they are really only good 3 ones, and they're all Christopher Nolan films, which I can understand why people feel that way. Note Strider said 1966, it's the Silver Age on screen, perfect casting and a wonderful blend of insanity and fun with the dash of introspection. I think that's probably the best description of 1966 Batman that anyone could ever say. Let's see here. Street Cold 7650 said Batman 89 will always have a special place in their heart. Admiral Foxy the Pirate said Batman 66. It's really interesting to see a Batman with the personality of Superman. It would be cool to see that again in modern times with an updated suit. And I think we got one more. The Coldest EXE said, let's see here. They said 1943 Batman solely based on how they've never seen it and the costume looks hilarious, which is true. I don't know if have you ever seen the image of 1943 Batman?
I don't think that I have.
Yeah.
Look it up sometime. It is atrocious, but I'm sure it was probably like good enough for Hollywood, but it is the most wonky looking thing ever. Wow. I mean, it literally looks like, someone's grandmother put the costume together. So, but yeah.
I was gonna say, to follow up on what someone said about 89, I will rewatching it, and I think, The Dark Knight is the standard and is just an epic movie. But I will say, and it's been the same way with rewatching some of the original Spider-Man films. Mm-hmm. There's like a sadness and nostalgia there where, there's at one point in the 89 film where, and I will say this, the Batman has a little bit of a vintage feel to it. So that's kind of cool when you guys see it. But there are ones where I think Vicky Vale calls Knox about something, and he's like, "Well, make the evening edition," and like they're all, I think there's stuff that like would, I don't know if it's just our age group or whatever that we won't ever see again. The same thing happened with like, and nostalgia from New York too, with the original Spider-Man movies, them living in these walk-ups and stuff like that, which really isn't what New York is like these days. So I don't know, that was a little bit of like kind of a cool retro thing that I kind of miss, but times change and things change. But that stuck out to me watching 89.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, man, that was the apparently the movie is very long, but so will this episode on the Batman be as well. And if you stuck around all the way to the end of it with us, we really appreciate your patronage and your listenership. We're always grateful for the people that come along this journey with us. We're especially grateful for Michael Rothman, who joined us today. Before we let you go, Michael, we want to say a big thank you first off, but we also want you to give our listeners somewhere where they can find you online.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. I am on TikTok at Superhero Talk, TOK. Twitter at The Real Rothman. Never lived that one down.
It's never going to get old.
Never going to get old. And that's about it. I'll be on this podcast 24/7 because we're never going to hang up. So aside from that,
this conversation will just continue for eternity.
Right.
And I am actually going to change my Twitter name to the real Kevin Stoliker. Not that there are any fake ones, but like I'm just totally jealous of your vibe. Sean, did you want to say anything? You know how I love to catch you off guard at the end.
Well, no. So go ahead and move on.
Okay.
Boom.
If Sean has no more to add to the conversation, that is going to wrap up another episode of the Caption Life. We hope that you enjoyed listening. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button on whatever major podcast platform you listen to us on. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Caption Life. If you like what we're doing, give us a shout out, tag us in your posts. For more info about us and all of our previous episodes, please visit thecaptionlife.com. Until next time,
where's Rachel? I'm Batman. Where were the other drugs going?
Why did you say that name?
Yeah.